This unique design was maybe the most interesting and bizarre-looking aircraft of World War II. It was developed as an answer for the need for new, faster reconnaissance planes just before World War II. And even though its flight performance was good, in the end its unusual design discouraged the officials to order it into service. This was the Blohm Voss BV 141. So let's see the history of this aircraft today. The very first military use of aircraft was for reconnaissance and as artillery spotters during the First World War, and ever since armies around the world used them in these roles. The reconnaissance aircraft didn't need to be particularly fast, well-armed or maneuverable. Instead, they needed a sturdy and simple design to be able to operate from remote airfields, preferably close to the front lines, good visibility for their crews, and ability to carry cameras. But the quickly advancing technologies brought changes to all types of aircraft, and the reconnaissance planes were no exception. The main reconnaissance aircraft for the Luftwaffe in the early 1930s was the Heinkel HE-46, which was designed in 1931 and entered service a few years later. It had excellent visibility and handling, but it was created just at the beginning of a new era. As during the 1930s, in just a few years, the advances in aviation technology brought radical changes. The HE-46 was soon replaced with the Henschel HS-126, which was considered a great reconnaissance aircraft and saw action in the Spanish Civil War. But during this conflict, it became clear that with the appearance of the new fast monoplane fighters, the age of the small, slow reconnaissance planes came to an end, and they needed to evolve as well. Though the HS-126 only entered service in 1937, the RLM already issued new specifications for its replacement in the same year. These new specifications called for increased engine power, around 900 horsepower, and overall higher performance. The new aircraft also had to be able to carry offensive and defensive armament, and 200 kilograms of bombs. The Arado, Focke-Wulf and Blohm Voss companies all decided to enter the competition, and they started working on their entries. The Arado design, the AR-198, was a fairly conventional looking plane, featuring a gondola for the observer at the bottom of the fuselage. The RLM initially preferred this design because of its conventional and simple construction, but flight tests showed an overall poor handling, and the Air Ministry was concerned about Arado's insufficient manufacturing capacity as well. Focke-Wulf entered their FW-189 design, which was the opposite of the conventional-looking Arado plane. It featured a twin-boom tail with a stepless glazed cockpit in the center, and used two 465 horsepower Argus engines. Though the company ignored the requirements asking for just one engine, the design was still accepted in the competition. But even the Focke-Wulf design looked conventional compared to the Blohm Voss one. Their BV-141, which initially was called HA-141, as the design work was carried out at their subsidiary, the Hamburger Flugzeugbau, was a very unusual design. It was an asymmetrical aircraft where the engine was placed in the nose of the fuselage, and the crew compartment in a separate offset nacelle. In a way, the engine and propeller won't hamper the visibility for the crew. The rear section of the crew compartment ended in a cone-shaped gun position, and the center of gravity was slightly offset on the aircraft to counter the engine torque and ensure stability. The designer of the aircraft, Dr. Richard Vogt, created this plane to meet the requirements of using only one engine but still achieve good all-around visibility, though he approached the problem in an unorthodox way. He also designed many other interesting aircraft during World War II, like the giant BV-238 flying boat, or the smaller but widely used BV-138, which I have already made a video about, so if you want to know more about that type, check it out. The RLM initially refused to finance the project, as they had little confidence in its performance based on the bizarre look of the aircraft, but Blohm Voss decided to develop it on their own expense. They managed to finish the first prototype by early 1938, and it made its maiden flight at the end of February. The flight went smoothly, without any major problems, and later Ernst Udet, the head of the Luftwaffe Technical Department, also flew the plane. Based on the flight performance of the prototype, the RLM reluctantly accepted the type into the competition, and ordered 2 additional units for further testing. This first iteration of the plane featured a raised pilot cockpit, which did not satisfy the RLM officials, so on the upcoming variants it was changed. By September, the second finished aircraft was accepted as well, and this plane received the designation BV-141V1, and actually the very first plane became the V2 variant. This second aircraft was the first to feature the stepless crew compartment without the raised cockpit, and it was slightly larger than the first model. The wingspan was increased by 10 cm and the length by 30 cm. The following V3 variant was again increased in size to improve directional stability. Its length was now 12.15 meters from the original 11.1, and its wingspan 15.4 meters compared to the original 15 meters. It also featured a wider track on the landing gear, and this was the first version to feature the plane's planned armament. This variant during the test flights showed very good handling and met all the requirements of the competition, and its performance boosted the confidence in the type, so the RLM ordered 5 additional pre-production aircraft. These became the BV-141A1 to A5 variants. They also received the V4 to V8 designations. The first A variant, the V4, started its evaluation flights in early 1939, but soon it got damaged on landing, so the next V5 took its place and finished the evaluation in January 1940. The reports on the test flights were surprisingly favorable. Despite the strange look of the aircraft, it was easy to fly and handled very well. But the positive reports couldn't change the unfavorable views towards the design, so in the end it was rejected and the production plans were cancelled in April 1940. Though officially the reason for the rejection was the design being too underpowered, but actually many at the RLM just didn't like the unusual plane and didn't want to take a risk putting it in production. The Focke-Wulf FW-189 was soon declared as winner for the competition and entered service a year later. If you want to know more about that interesting design, check out my video dedicated to the type. Though the BV-141A series was cancelled for being underpowered, Blohm and Voss at that time already worked on an improved variant, using the 1560 horsepower BMW 801 engine. Though they didn't know at that time, this engine choice later played a big part in the final cancellation of the project. Apart from the stronger power plant, the new B series included many additional changes and improvements. It featured structural reinforcements, a new asymmetrical tail design, new redesigned wing panels, and again a size increase compared to the A variant, with a longer fuselage and increased wingspan. The B version of the aircraft was 13.95 meters long, with a wingspan of 17.45 meters. It had an empty weight of 4,700 kilograms and a maximum takeoff weight of 6,100 kilograms. The plane was powered by a single BMW 801 air-cooled radial engine, developing 1,560 horsepower. With this engine, the aircraft could reach a top speed of 438 km an hour and a cruise speed of 363 km an hour. It had a combat range of 1,900 km and a service ceiling of 10,000 meters. The armament of the plane consisted of 2 forward-firing 7.92mm machine guns and a dual 7.92mm machine gun in the rear defensive position. As requested in the original specifications, the aircraft could also carry 200 kilograms of bombs. The RLM ordered 5 units of the new B variant, and they received the designations V9 to V13, and the first finished aircraft made its maiden flight in January 1941. The test flights of the B model, however, were less satisfactory than its predecessors. The aircraft showed several faults, and to fix them it needed numerous modifications and structural reinforcements. The type also showed aerodynamic problems, which caused so severe vibrations, the speed of the aircraft was limited to 450 km an hour during testing. It was also found during the armament tests that the cockpit quickly filled up with smoke during firing, due to inadequate ventilation. The constant redesigns to fix all the problems slowed down the work on the B variant so much that the final fifth aircraft was only delivered in May 1943. By this time its rival, the WWII, was already in service for almost 2 years. The type still made it to service trials, and late 1941 the V-10 variant was sent to a reconnaissance training unit for field trials. The performance of the aircraft was deemed satisfactory, and plans were made to send a number of these aircraft to the Eastern Front for operational trials. It seemed this strange aircraft can still enter service despite all the problems during its development. But several unfortunate events changed its course again. For a start, by this time, the BMW 801 power plants were mainly allocated for the Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighters. And also, because of the damage caused to the Focke-Wulf factories by Allied bombings, the production of the FW-200 Condor was transferred to Blohm Voss and occupied most of their building capacity. And finally, the already serving FW-189 reconnaissance planes had very similar performance and could already take on all the roles the BV-141 could. All these events finally resulted in the cancellation of the plans for operational trials and the postponement of further production. But in the end, this postponement turned out to be final, and the V-13 variant was the last of these planes built. The Blohm Voss BV-141 was a very ambitious and unconventional design, and though its performance was on par with its rivals, the slow development and the distrust amongst the officials towards the strange aircraft in the end sealed its fate, and it never entered service. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.